What is going on, guys? DragonTamerBlayde here, and we are continuing our set review. We're almost done here. We got just one more video after this one. Gonna be taking a look at the endurance cards from Houses of Morrowind. Up first, we have Vardvark Experiment. 0 cost, summon a 0/1 Vardvark in each lane. Maybe if you have buff effects, this is good. It's kind of like a free token, so token decks may find a way to fit it in. I don't know. It's a weird card. It's more inconsistency for Smuggler's Hall, unfortunately. But who knows. Next, we've got Ald Velothi Assassin. 2 cost, 1/2 with lethal and rally. I think this is a really, really good card. 2 cost with lethal is, for 1/2, is probably pretty close to good enough. And then when you add the rally onto it, even if it just swings once, you're giving something in your hand +1/+1. So I think this is a very, very good card. Especially in the early game. Excellent card, I think. Next up, we've got Alexia's Disciple. 2 cost, 2/3 with Exalt 2, heal all friendly creatures. So for 4 costs, you get 2/3 body and healing all of your creatures. In the early game, you're probably just dropping this as a 2/3. But possibly in the late game, if you've got a bunch of beat up buff creatures, maybe it could be good. I don't know. I have a hard time kind of picturing the value of a ton of these Exalt cards. But I'm not denying that there's probably a world where this gets some use. It's a powerful effect. It's just a matter of, is it powerful enough? Next up, we've got Caius's Machinations. I like this card a lot. It's probably, in my opinion, might be the best Betray card. If not, it's close to it. 2 cost action. Give the top 3 creatures of your deck +1/+1. So that's pretty good just as it is. And then if you Betray, you do it again. So I think the key to this card is it guarantees it's the top 3 creatures. So it doesn't say just give the top 3 cards, and if they're actions, you're out of luck. This specifically targets your top 3 creatures wherever they are. And you can give up to all 3 of them +2/+2. So I think this is a pretty good card. Next up, we've got Quara Clan Bloodkin. 2 cost, 1/5, so pretty solid stats for the cost overall. But it's a drain creature and only 1 attack, so I don't think you're getting a ton of use out of this. If this was something like lethal, this card would be absolutely insane. Or not insane, but really, really good. As it is, maybe Ring of Imaginary Might memes. I don't know. I don't think it's that good, though. Next, we've got Trespassers Bane. Set a creature's power to 1. This can help you to trade with it and survive. So it's another card that kind of combos to weakness, or similar to weakness. Weakness as to health, so you can guarantee to remove something. This can, if you have enough power, you can guarantee you remove something and almost guarantee you survive. So it's a decent card. I don't know if it's good enough on its own to see play, though. Next up, we've got Ancestral Dead. You'll see it on the channel soon, but Skeleton Tribal is a thing, people. And this is one of the cards for it. It's not a great card. It also has Slay Synergy for Slay decks. 3 cost, 2/4, Slay, summon a Risen Dead. That's a 1/1 guard skeleton. So, again, Skeleton Tribal is a thing, and it's a decent Slay card. I like this card. Next, we've got the On-Day Client Sorcerer. I've talked about this one before. 3 costs, 4/3, and at the end of your turn, if 3 or more creatures from you or your opponent died this turn, you put a random blood magic spell into your hand. So, obviously, it requires both you and your opponents to have some creatures, but I think this is an absolutely great card because blood magic spells are very, very powerful cards, and they're pretty cheap. So, if you trigger this in the early game, you're guaranteed to be able to play that next turn. So I think this is a really, really good card. It's good enough with just with the stats, and even if you just trigger the effect once, it becomes kind of crazy. Next up, we've got the Daedric Crescent, a 3 cost +2/+2 item, and it gives your creature the ability Slay +1/+1. So it's got the stat buff of a Scimitar, and it gives you a Slay effect of +1/+1. So I'm not too sure how I feel about this card. I don't think it's that great in general, but potentially, if you're throwing it into a Slay deck, it can help you trade and live. And if you have Brotherhood Sanctuaries up, you're getting multiple +1/+1 boosts. So I think this card might be better than I'm giving it credit for on first gasp. But I think it would need to be in a dedicated Slay deck. Next up, we've got the Enduro Mastermind. This is another one of those cards that I think would fit great in a kind of not slay, but a Graveyard Sorcerer, Graveyard Scout. Not Graveyard Scout, Graveyard Sorcerer, or Graveyard Telvanni. 3 cost, 2/1, so you're getting like a 1 cost body, but the effect is pretty decent. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck. You draw one and discard the other. So you get to thin your deck by 2, draw a card, and potentially put something that you want in the graveyard into the graveyard. So I think this is a pretty good card for those decks. I don't know if regular decks are going to want to run this, but if you're running a 75 card deck, thinning your deck out a bunch could be pretty powerful. So I think this is a pretty good card. I think it should see a fair amount of play. We've already talked about the Knight of Nissus before. Rally card, 2/3, Trooper in your hand. Rally decks are going to like this card a lot. Next up, we've got Bonewalker, 4-cost 1/2 with Prophecy and Guard, and Summon is +1/+1 for each enemy creature in this lane. So this kind of shuts down tokens early game. It does play into Skeleton Tribal, but I actually dropped it from my Skeleton deck. I think it's an okay card. I don't know. I don't think this card is that great, but if you want a defensive prophecy, it could be the kind of card you're looking for. Next up, we've got Caius Cosades. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. 4-cost 3/4. Look at 2 cards in your opponent's hand. Guess the one that's in your hand. If you're right, give all creatures in your hand +1/+1. So obviously very, very good effect. Buffs everything in your hand. And all you have to do is guess correctly what your opponent has in their hand. So pretty decent card. You're not playing it for the body, you're playing it for the effect, but you get an okay body left behind. Next up, we've got the Mournhold Pilgrim. 4-cost 4/4 with Regenerate, or you can pay 7 for a 6/6 with Regenerate. To be honest with you, Regenerate is kind of inconsistent. Maybe this, since it's a early game creature, it could, or mid-ish game creature, it could fight and kind of get use out of the Regenerate ability. But with the Exalt, I'd rather just play the Iron Scale Dragon and get a 7-cost 7/7 with Regenerate instead of 7-cost 6/6. But again, you're playing for flexibility. I don't think this card is that good, though. We probably won't see this very much. Next up, we've got the Redoran Oathman. This is crazy in rally decks. 4-cost 3/3. If you have a Willpower card in play, you double this card's health. And if you have a Strength card in play, you double this card's power. So if you've been buffing this card with rallies or that Caius card, any of those buff cards, this card gets doubled power and attack if you have those 2 cards in play. This one, I think, is probably the most powerful Oathman card, especially for the deck that it fits into. This card is going to be pretty insane. Next up, we've got Rising Bones, a 4-cost action with Betray. Summon a 3/3 Risen Horror with Guard. I think Risen Horror is a skeleton, so I need to put that into my skeleton deck. I don't have it in there at the moment. But getting 2 3/3s with Guard is pretty decent for 4, and all you have to do is kill off maybe one of those skeleton tokens you swung for. Next up, we have one of the cards, I think probably the biggest reason why Skeleton Tribal is more of a thing. We have the Skeleton Champion, 4-cost 4/4 with Guard, which I think is pretty good as it is, as just a raw card. And it has the summon effect, give all other friendly skeletons +1/+1. So it does the Bone Colossus effect a little bit earlier. Can buff all of your skeletons to go face usually, but trade even better. It has Guard as well to protect the other guys. This is a really good card for Skeleton Tribal. It's probably a pretty decent arena card since it's a 4/4 with Guard. I don't know. It might not see any other play. If it was all other undeads, it'd be crazy, but as it is, it's good for Skeleton Tribal. Next up, we've got the Baal Isra War Rider. 5-cost 3/6 with Rally. Rally decks probably like this card because it survives pretty well and gets to attack theoretically at least 1 or twice. I don't think many other decks are going to want to run this. 5-cost 3/6 isn't amazing, but the Rally effect is pretty good. So if this card sees play, it's going to be because of Rally. Maybe I'll be wrong there. Next up, we've got the Betty Netch. 5-cost 0/5. While this card is in play, your max magic is increased by 2. So that's like that 2-cost 2/2 card that Endurance has and increases your max magic up by 1. But this card does a much worse job of surviving. Dies actually quite easily into a ton of things. But if you can get it to stick around even for a turn, your max magic being up by 2 can trigger your Hiss Groves 2 turns early. A couple other cards. I don't think this card's that good though. I don't think most ramp decks are going to want to run this card. Next up, we've got the Indomitable Ordinator. 5-cost 5/5 with Guard. Or for Exalt 1, so 6-cost 5/5, their opponent can't target this card with actions. So that ability, you can't be targeted with actions, is pretty strong. We've seen it on Nahagleev. Doesn't mean it can't be damaged by things like Ice Storm, but it can't be Javelin, so it's probably a pretty strong effect. I don't know what particular deck runs this right now, but it is a strong effect, so this might work. And a 5/5 guard for 5 is okay enough. Next up, we've got Odurn Iran Necromancer. I've talked about this card before. I can't wait to use this card personally. It gets even crazier if it gets buffed. This is going to be a really fun card to use. We've already talked about Alexia before. 7 cost 6/6. For Exalt 3, you can get a 10 cost 12/12. And friendly exalted creatures cannot take damage. So this is like the Exalt GOAT right there. Next up, we've got Bloodline Outcast. 7 cost 7/7 Vampire. Whenever a creature dies, this card gains Drain this turn. So 7 cost 7/7 is it doesn't really do anything to the board, so it's not going to be super great in the late game. But it has better stats than like Night Shadow or comparable drain creatures. This might be our biggest drain creature in the game right now, although it is a conditional drain. So if you can get a swing off with this card, it becomes great, obviously. But it just doesn't do anything, so it's a little bit of a slow card for turn 7. Not horrible, I just don't think it's great. Next up, we have Lich's Ascension. 7 cost support. Your cards cost 0, but you may only play 1 card per turn. I don't know what deck would ever run this card. This is one of the cards that I think about, and I'm like, alright, at first glance, you're just like, no. But I'm sure that there'll be some creative player out there that finds a way to make this card be really, really strong. Maybe, I don't know, like, I can't even think of where I would use this off the top of my head, because you can't, like, just slam a bunch of high-cost cards into your deck, because you have to survive till turn 7 and have this card. I don't know. Like I said, I really don't know. But it's a cool card. It's a really, really cool card. And I'm hoping someone can break it. Then we have Mushroom Tower, a 9 cost support. Your actions have Betray. This is another one of those cards. This is god-awfully slow. Most of the time, you can't really afford to do nothing on turn 9. But this is another one of those cards that I think somebody will find a way to do some crazy things with. Giving all actions Betray means you can cast Lightning Bolt twice. You can cast Dawn's Wrath twice. So you can do some crazy things with this card. It's just a matter of being ahead enough to be able to do nothing on turn 9 and be okay with it. Tough to do, but I'm sure somebody out there will make it work and cause some highlight plays. But that's going to be it for now, guys. Again, leave your feedback on what you guys think of some of the cards from the Endurance portion of the set. We've got one more video to go. We'll be doing all of the multi-attribute and all of the neutrals in one video combined, since they're both pretty short. And then that'll be it for our full set review for Houses of Morrowind. So yeah, that's going to be it for now, guys. Thank you all very, very much for watching. I'm DragonTamerBlayde, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.